Fantastic. Megha, we are actually on air. Richie, thank you very much for that. Wow. Rich, good morning. How are you doing? Anyway, welcome back to Metropole's television business. My name is Simba, Elijah Charles Kiage. Let's intro what discussion that we're going to have this morning. Now, looking at the likes of Hollywood, Nollywood, Bollywood, all these are largely supported and in a huge way contribute to the growth of the economies, and thus in a developing country like ours there is a need for nurturing creativity. Now creativity can be diverse, from films, DJing, music, fashion, designers, writing, poetry, contemporary dance, visual arts, event planners, and what have you. But how best can we bring recognition and support to this creative industry so that it supports and contributes to the economy? To help us with this conversation, we're joined by Megha Dutta. Did I get it right, Megha?
You did.
It's Megha, isn't it?
Megha, yes.
Megha, see, I'm already there. She is a creative director at J. Walter Thompson Kenya Limited. And that is it. And JWT Kenya, and Teresa Makori, who is Associate Creative Director at ISOBAR Kenya, an advertising agency in Kenya. Good. Now, let's therefore begin this conversation. Now, there is a need for nurturing creativity in a developing country like ours. Let's talk about this need and the gap that exists. Megha, can you address that?
I think when you start talking about the gap,
yes,
we must understand the extent of creativity and not the confinement. If we keep thinking about creativity in terms of TV ads and radio and even social media, you'd feel that there's nothing more we can do to nurture it. But creativity is so much more. And each touch point where a user meets a brand, there is scope for creativity. And brands are not just telecoms and Coca-Colas and sodas. It could be how a person walks through a library. Easy to maneuver through our libraries. What is the experience? Is it inspiring to walk through our museums? How good is the journey from ticketing to destination on the SGR? If you see it like that, the scope is endless to fill the gap.
Pretty much. All right, let me weigh in on that from you, Teresa, as well. Where is that need for us to nurture that creativity? And this gap that Megha is talking about, do you share the same sentiment that it does exist and needs to be addressed?
Yeah, I guess I'll speak more from like a young creative in this industry.
Yes.
For me, the gap that I would see is, yes, as Megha said, there's creativity is expansive. As even in your intro, you've got all these different ways and facets and industries that creatives can fit into. But for me, I see that there's a gap in that clear path of training. So basically, I guess my experience and a lot of my colleagues has been a more apprenticeship and
yes,
self-teaching. And so I feel the gap there is to actually have a clear training path, because I'm a self-taught writer, I'm a self-taught creative. I actually, like, by education, I am a molecular biologist by education, but I went into the industry because of passion and because I really wanted to pursue what just came naturally to me. But I feel like what would help, I guess, 5 years back, like Terry 5 years back, is if there was, or even 10 years back when I was choosing, what to get into my career, if there was a clear path of training for this creative. That's what I would say about the gap.
Yes. Teresa, you mentioned something very interesting. Just before I go to Megha now, so we can start laying and talking bits about this conversation, you say something very interesting that, wow, I mean, what lacks is proper training in this creative industry. I want to ask you, though, is it the way that we've viewed the creative industry, that is something that you do on the side as opposed to a mainstay? Would you have been different? Have you been trained into it right at the start?
Oh, for sure. If I started from, because I'd always been a writer, I guess, from like primary school and high school. But there wasn't that, the career fairs would have, you wouldn't have a writer there or an artist or a painter or a film producer or somebody in the advertising agency. You will have, the what society deems as, like what you're subliminally taught. You've got the engineering, the law. I'm not saying those are not important, but you don't really have a representation of those careers at a young age.
Yes.
And so that's not even, or even spaces where you could go and be part of a community where people are, writers or artists or that. So that those are very few and far in between in the country. So yeah, I think there's that gap even like as you're younger growing up, and definitely if it's something that I was exposed to earlier, like if I was exposed to advertising and copywriting earlier, I would have definitely fallen into it much earlier. Yeah.
Megha, you are a creative director, and that's a role which I like to also think, even in the creative industry, it's one of those new roles that we are actually starting to see in the creative industry. Fine. But you're a woman, and you're in an economy that sort of views this industry as not a mainstay, something that people would tell you, well, other than that, what do you do? Is it the way that we've inclined our economy? That's why we're talking about this gap. And do you realize now it's 2021? Is there sort of like a shift to recognizing this industry as a mainstay?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, worldwide, if you see, advertising is billions of dollars of industry, and you cannot separate advertising from the economy of the country, because you see, nowadays countries are not just geographical areas. Each country is a brand in themselves. So if America is a brand, and when you talk about tourists and travel, you go to a country because of the brand that they have formed. And so creativity and advertising is very, very economically viable.
Yes.
You have to shift the perspective of how you look at creativity.
Megha, I'm still on you as well. Talk to me about, when we even talk about gaps, we have to look at you as a woman as well in this space. Do you have many women working with you? Are women viewing the creative industry as an area that they can also get in and make a buck?
I feel that, of course, there are lots of very, very well represented. There are lots of junior women.
Yes.
Keep dropping off and keep dropping off. They drop off. So they don't rise to leadership. And so all that representation in the junior roles comes to naught in leadership. All young women in advertising, I would say, don't drop off without a fight.
Yes.
There are in organizations, they can give you and stigmatize working from home. 2020 has shown us that you can work from home and balance. So don't drop off.
Yes, pretty much. Teresa, let me bring you in on this as well. Let's talk about exactly where we are in Kenya. From where you're sitting this morning, what do you think is lacking in the creative industry, other than that training, which you've said is really very important to therefore sort of propping up this creative industry? Other than that, can you talk to me about the other things that you think should be working, but they are not working?
I think I'll jump on, which is that representation of,
yes.
So as I was brought into the advertising industry by men and mentored by men who I'm super grateful for, and I've learned so much. But I remember when I met Megha for the first time, I was never told you can't be a creative leader, but I wasn't shown, and so seeing a woman actually, being in that leadership space is sort of like, I was even telling her, sort of like a mirror reflecting back to you the possibilities that you can actually progress creatively in this industry, and actually be a leader and actually make something of this career as a woman. So yeah.
Another area that I want us to talk about, Teresa, this morning, just before I let you off the hook, is the moral policing, especially when it comes to the creative industry, especially in Kenya. Talk to me about that. Do you think that promotes the creative industry, or in one way or another, it sort of leads to, I would say, the curtailing of your creativity?
The moral policing can you give me a bit of an example?
I would like to point out to even the leaders around, let me point you out to a famous name in that, Ezekiel Mutua. You've seen exactly the way is sort of moral policing what you are doing in the creative industry. Does that promote it, or does that curtail its creativity?
I'm not sure I'm getting the question. So in terms of moral policing of the content that creators are actually putting out?
That's it. That's the question.
Okay. Well, obviously I would say that the I guess hindered from sharing their content. Maybe it's because we're not there yet as a society in terms of taking in that content, and
Yes.
and maybe we're not ready as a society to take that up. And I guess maybe it's slowly introducing it, but not like throwing it all out at
Yes.
everyone. So I guess those issues like homosexuality or any of these other issues that are probably not palatable to our society right now. I guess it's also just reading the room and seeing what kind of content that people are able to take in right now. But I think also those creators are sort of coming in as trying to be the voice behind maybe like the new generation, and starting to say that we need to start having these conversations. So yeah, I guess it's just finding the middle ground of where you're still able to voice yourself, but in a way not be completely unpalatable to the people receiving that content.
I get you. Megha, let's talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen the way in which different industries have realigned themselves towards the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, it's interesting we're talking about post-COVID-19. We're still within that COVID-19 pandemic, Megha. Talk to me. Which way have you realigned yourself within the COVID-19 pandemic, and what do you see post-COVID-19 in your industry? Any new emerging issues that we can tell us this morning?
Yeah, I think, during this pandemic phase, what happened is there's a slowdown of the process of consuming.
Yes.
Which means that because you don't have any immediate plans of travel, any immediate plans of buying clothes, where would you wear it, buying shoes. So the buying has slowed down. What has given the consumer then is a very elongated digital research phase where they can search, compare, analyze, get peer reviews of things that they want to buy. So that elongated phase of digital research is where I feel brands can really distinguish themselves, because people are spending a lot of time online looking at things they want to buy, comparing them, analyzing them. And so that slowdown, there's no rush to buying.
Yes.
And this gives brands a very good window to differentiate themselves, speak to the consumer. And we have understood with COVID is that you can't just pan talk to an audience. You have to the communication has to become individual.
Yes.
You have to talk to one person at a time now.
Yes. You're mentioning something very interesting, Megha, and I want to get your 2 cents on that as well. When it comes to marketing the creative industry, marketing your service, some people like to think that your service is the marketing itself. Is it that complex for you to market your product in the creative industry?
That is a very interesting question.
Yes.
And nobody has asked me that before. So, it is ironical that we do marketing for so many brands, and yet as the creative industry, we market ourselves so poorly. We do pitches for free. We have intellectual property. We freelance work for exposure and never really get together ourselves. And I think that is because of the intense competition that exists between creative agencies. If we just stop stop competing with each other and then compete as the creative industry versus world, we'll do much better.
Teresa, let me get your 2 cents on that as well, because I've spoken to a couple of people saying, well, your product is essentially what you're using to market yourself. Is it complex to market yourself?
Actually, I think it's what Megha said. I realized that marketers are sort of, or advertisers were sort of like the people behind the magic that you
Yes.
never really see. So even what you're saying, we never really market ourselves. I never knew about the advertising agency or industry until I decided I wanted to do writing, and until I saw an ad, and I wondered, so is it the company that does the ad, or who actually does the ad? And that's how I actually discovering the agency life and the marketing community. So yeah, she's right in terms of putting ourselves forward as the creatives, and the people behind all the amazing campaigns that you see.
Yes.
And maybe that would really help in sort of showing, other creators out there that this is a space that they can fall into.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Teresa, again, the COVID-19 pandemic, I'd like to ask you that question because I actually also put it across to Megha. The COVID-19 pandemic has really shaken the economy. There's been a lot of realignment. What we thought were jobs are not jobs anymore. Talk to me, because it looks as if your creative industry, again, is pegged on an area that was quite defensive, online, internet. Would it be okay to say that you did not feel the heat of the COVID-19 pandemic? Or would I ask you like this? You were well-positioned industry, that you were the ones who were bound to gain or not feel that heat so much within the pandemic. How true or false is that?
I wouldn't say we didn't feel the heat because, of course, we're working with brands and clients who probably were feeling the heat. So we also needed to come together as, their partners and see what creative ways we can use to be relevant, make these brands time.
Yes.
And so we saw a shift in a lot of digital content creation, rather than, you're actually doing productions and shoots. We couldn't come together innovative in terms of how do we still connect to our consumers, how do we still relate to our consumers in the space that they're in at that time.
Yes.
And so we saw a lot of brand collaborations with upcoming content. I'm sure your Crazy Kana, your cartoonists. We saw a lot, like that's where our consumers' focus was on, that digital exploration. So we had to make sure that we were, I guess, pivoting in that. So I guess maybe you could say, yeah, we were well positioned, but we still had to also be very innovative.
Pretty much. Megha, now let's talk about the recognition of this creative industry in the Kenyan economy. When we look at the major industries in the country, we normally see what the focus of the government is. Especially when it comes to manufacturing, we see the focus on that, and all the industries that we keep on getting incentive after incentive from the government to guys who are in that industries. Talk to me, do you feel recognized in the Kenyan economy? Talk to me from an inside-out approach.
I don't think so. I feel like if you talk about even the seriousness with which people talk about advertising,
Yes.
it's like, it's like a service industry of the service industry. And so thrice removed from anybody's agenda. But no, I feel like this is the wrong way to approach advertising. And what I began with still holds. If you see advertising as that limited 30-second spot, 1-minute radio spot, then yes, it doesn't need any patronage from the government. But if you see advertising as a driving force
Yes.
to make sure that the brand of Kenya, each industry gets its message out. Would you imagine if every manufacturing industry, every service industry in Kenya understood their consumer, they had a conversation with the consumer, people understood for what this service, how the service can help me, it would be a more thriving. giving people opportunities to buy into you is a much long-lasting proposition than painting a buy my product.
Teresa, clear for us this statement this morning. Do you feel that you're well recognized in your industry, just like other industries and other sectors are well recognized in the economy?
I mean, I think we're trying to get there with, the different award ceremonies and the platforms that we've created to recognize, creative excellence within the industry.
Yes.
I think we could do better. Again, I will just jump on what Megha said. And if you think about every business requires creativity. These businesses and brands that, we're saying are the ones driving the economy need creativity to drive the economy. Maybe like think of Nike as somebody to do their logo. They needed somebody to, think of the brand color, somebody to all those people are creatives. So if you really think about it, creatives are driving our economy. We're
Let
just
me
not
jump in there
Yeah.
and talk about something. It's not all Teresa and I are here are because a company called but spirits might be their core business, but they understand that the path of their product to the hearts of their consumer is through creativity. And which is why EABL, ISA have come together to nurture this young creative talent. And when I was at this forum, I was so surprised to see that they had opened the forum to anyone who thought, any young creative who thought he or she would be able to participate in it, not just in advertising. I met two very young, bright music producers who wanted to come in and showcase their advertising ideas. It was brilliant. And so kudos to ISA and kudos to brands like EABL who know that if you don't stand behind creativity, we won't get the platform. So thank you guys wherever you are.
Pretty much. Megha and Teresa, thank you very much for taking your time this morning to speak to Metropole Television. It's been a privilege to have an all-woman panel for me. It never happens to me. I hope this is the start of it in 2021.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank you so much.
talking to you.
Pretty much. On that note, we take a short break here on Business AM. But once we come back, let's answer this question. How much should you be buying bread? 50 shillings? 55 shillings? And what are the economies that go into setting that price despite the recent resumption of the 16% VAT? Once we come back.